Hi, friends. Abhay Darndekar here from Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button and tap the alarm bell so you can never miss out on new episodes and content made just for you as we celebrate the vibrant global Indian and South Asian experience. Thanks.
When it comes to the word success, I think I'm still chasing it. It lights a fire in me. But something that's also come up that I measure is my worth.
Being Indian American, Gujarati American, Hindu American, South Asian American, are there any of those elements that kind of speak to you on a day-to-day basis?
If there's anything I know about our community is that we're resilient and people will champion stories being told. I'm always hopeful that it'll just be more and we'll get the platform that we deserve. And
Hey, I'm Paras Patel. I'm an actor, and this is Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing.
Yeah. My name is Abhay Darndekar, and I share conversations with talented and interesting individuals linked to the global Indian and South Asian community. It's informal and informative, adding insights to our evolving cultural expressions, where each person can proudly say, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. So in a way, I think, honestly, that acting and truly any expression by Indian Americans is such a great way to share a window into the sheer diversity of our community and who we are. But it's also a close look into that kind of collective mirror to see the talent and skills of so many emerging artists out there. And that's why I'm so pleased to welcome Paras Patel on Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Paras is best known for his role as Matthew on the Amazon Prime series The Chosen, and he's appeared in a number of other film and television projects over the past decade. And most importantly, he is now the 10th Patel to be on our show, and it is so terrific to share some time with him. Paras, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
glad to be in the 10th or percentile of Patels or the top 10 that you had so far.
You're the 10th, the latest, and the most important as of today. So, and I'm actually, honestly, like out of, almost 300 plus guests now, only having 10 Patels, I'm a little shocked that that number's so low, but,
Right? I know
you
that
know,
everyone's just like, is that the only surname out of India and everything like that? So you got to up your Patel game, my friend, but it's okay.
that's a great way to put it. I have to up my Patel game. That's true. Listen, you're someone who's had, such a global level of interest and following, but we were just chatting briefly about like sort of our origins and whatnot, and at least in the US, but in your head, are you still just a kid who's living out his dream from Florida?
Yeah, truthfully, I think that's kind of the best way to operate and to be genuine and to kind of show the world who you really are is to never stray away from your humble beginnings.
Yeah.
For me, moving out to LA about 12 years ago to pursue this dream I had, I had a lot of obstacles in my way, plenty of people around here saying like, oh, there's not a space for people like me, or we won't make it, or there's no roles and things like that. So it was a welcome challenge that I kind of fought through, and booking The Chosen kind of at the moment we were such a small show and it kind of just blew up on its own. So from those experiences, I just kind of I think when you've been through something and been through your low lows, it's hard to let your successes or your highs change you. Because those moments that break you have also been to build you as well and lead you to where you are. And I kind of just utilize that. So yeah, I'm still that Florida boy, loves to watch Bollywood films, loves to do the Bollywood dancing and all that stuff. And I think that's kind of what anyone's essence should be is, a lot of times in acting class, they're like, find your inner child to bring out that emotion or to like react and be spontaneous. And so I kind of hold my inner child's hand now in my roles and things that I do. Just it's also just I think people are attracted to someone that you can see is genuinely having fun. And I think the world needs to see that too. And
That's great.
It's an aura.
Yeah, no. That's so important. I love that. I'm holding my inner child's hand as you walk through this. And, this idea that like, we have that sort of safe space, that comforting space, that, kind of nostalgia for the idea of us being children. And I imagine that being in Hollywood, in the acting in the arts environment, it can be both super invigorating and it can feel sort of lonely at times as well. In order to get through that sort of safely, is that where that inner child, I mean, not just to be your best self on camera, but also kind of deal with the not get too seduced by those highs and not get too down by those lows. Is that the best vehicle to kind of accelerate balance so far? I mean, do you have to keep reminding yourself of like, hey, these are my roots. This is who I am. These are my people. This is my tribe, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's such a great question and such an important thing to ask, I feel, because I think a lot of people can resonate how other people deal with things. To answer your question, as this show got more and more popular, I found that my private life, like it was just hard to kind of protect that.
Yeah.
And so in an interesting way, I was kind of forced to work on myself, because, it just being in the public eye a lot, and then the pressures that come with it. And then also just, wanting to stay true to yourself and things like that. Like different things happen. So it's like, I always remember like, oh, all these actors that, are established and on their way, like, I want to be there. I always like put that on my vision boards as a goal to aspire to. And in a way, like I still don't really recognize where I am. I think I'm just kind of keeping myself like, I just feel like everything is timed for you. So I don't want to be in the present of, oh, I'm at this level. I want to keep working towards that. So I kind of live in the dark a little bit about that. But knowing how popular the show is and kind of getting recognized and things like that, you do realize like, oh, this is becoming more and more well known. I have to, be protective of my privacy and my friends and my family who I hang out with. So, the loneliness factor did start to build up a little bit, and it was kind of hard for me to handle at first.
Yeah.
But that taught me to really work on myself, seek help if I needed it or when I needed it, and also just find things that really make me happy. In the past year and a half, I really learned just the concept of being by yourself. I know that might sound odd, but there was a moment where I didn't know how to be by myself. Like I didn't know what to do, like, and I felt depressed. And so I've been on this journey of just kind of finding what Paras likes and just, doing things that interest me outside of acting, because those things will fuel your acting and will help you open up new perspectives. So it's been this cool journey that I guess I'm on right now, and I'm kind of living it to the fullest because I want to better myself, and I think everyone should have that goal in them, and I hope this inspires other people. But it's been very interesting, and I think that all has to do with the global success of the show, because I was not expecting it to be to the level it's at.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of a sudden there's a sort of microscopic lens on you from every possible angle, and you want to embrace it, but you also want to shelter yourself from it, and at the same time work on yourself as you kind of grow through that. Are these kind of natural? I mean, with people that in the industry, and like, as finding the success of this show, are these kind of like natural quantum levels that you just have to go through in this career and really figure it out? And like you said, you almost have to take a step away from yourself so you can work on that. But with each successful project, is there an element of this that you have to sort of practice, and the next time you're on a project that may, gain popularity, this becomes perhaps maybe a little bit easier? Or how do you navigate those little leaps that you have to make sometimes in this journey?
It's been one of those moments of you're discovering it as you move along. Like I mentioned earlier, the Chosen just started out as a web series, and there was very minimal funding to it, and we kind of filmed our first 4 episodes, not knowing if we'll even finish telling our first season, because it was an 8 episode season 1 show, and so we finally got the money to finish that the last 4 episodes towards the end of the following summer. It just kind of blew up after that, especially during the COVID times, and
Yeah.
I think it taught us all to kind of just. I don't believe in an overnight success. I think the world sees someone just arriving in media, and they're like, oh, this is an overnight success, but you're working towards that goal. So that's not what to say this was, but this was just an overnight, just people started discovering the show. I'm lucky that I'm on a cast, a huge ensemble cast of like 20 people, and we kind of are living this experience together. And so a lot of our big decisions or big moments in our lives are all coinciding together. So we have each other to kind of lean on and be like, so how are you navigating this space? Or,
Mm,
say you unintentionally get fan mail to your personal residence. How do you deal with that? So we're kind of learning
right.
the day-to-day lessons together. And I think
Yeah.
it's just making this whole this experience that much more enriching and memorable for me. And so to answer that briefly, is just
Yeah.
we're kind of just going through it, navigating the waters together, all of us. But I think that's where you learn the most.
That's great. Yeah, and it's nice to have a sort of professional family that you go through, this together, and
So
like,
rare. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. I mean, like, but there are surprise questions about, like, how do you deal with some of these things that are not necessarily everyday phenomenon for anyone else, but others, in that space can totally relate to it. Certainly, in thinking about The Chosen, I've read where you shared that playing Matthew, portraying a character who's got, is on the autism spectrum, has given you this kind of sense of purpose. And I just wonder, is that something that caught you by surprise at all? Were you sort of prepared to sort of discover this sense of purpose, or do you think that was more of a sort of slow build over time?
No, I would genuinely say it was a slow build. As Paras, like what I was always been this empathetic person, and I have this deep care for animals, but also this deep care for people that are shy, misunderstood, or just often navigate just briefly below the limelight, or like the
Mm,
light, if you if
yeah,
you if you follow what I'm saying. Because I was that kid. That's how I grew up. And I grew up, I told you earlier, I hold my inner child hand. I didn't do that growing up. I was always just, especially assimilating into the country. I was born here, but I guess I grew up trying to not really value my inner child. And I think now I'm in this era of saying, no, you made me who I am today.
yeah.
And so, when I think of Matthew and my portrayal of Matthew, that's kind of how I see him. And just to see not only the autistic community, but just the neurodivergent community as a whole, and seeing many people relate to him, and just see that through his journeys and obstacles and how he's really grown into himself, they feel like they can do that to themselves, or they can apply that and learn from it. It's just really rare to have a role that's really impacting people, not only in the
Mm,
States, but globally. I've
yeah.
been through different countries for premieres, and I've really, you get the same comments and the same love and the same just encouragement. And so it's really helping people. And I think that's where I started to realize this is what I was meant here to do, and kind of
Mm.
really just, show people the version of themselves maybe through Matthew.
And it's kind of fun when that kind of merging happens, right? That, like, you have this very unique background and you have your own personal experiences that are specific to you. And then you're put into this place where unexpectedly now you find yourself being sort of a champion of this particular character, but then also what that represents. And I imagine that that must actually feel great, when it has it, but it also carries some responsibilities if you take on that mantle as well. And is that something that you've found with the purpose that you speak of, that there is that sense of responsibility to ensure that that gets portrayed in the right way, and that people have, who are in that, sort of neurodivergent space, have a voice and ambassador, if you will?
Yeah, that's kind of how I've coined myself as the ambassador to the neurodivergent community. When this show first cast, its series regulars, this was about 8 years ago. And so the push towards authentic roles wasn't as growing as it is now and as strong as it is now. And so I remember when the show did do its successful, just started blowing up, I kind of felt guilty to take a space from someone that might have been on the spectrum and an actor. And I know that might have been a rare pool to find, especially if you're portraying someone from, the Middle East. And so I remember just thinking to myself, like, this is where I should really show my support and show that I see them, I am with them, and I will do everything I can to raise their platform and raise their light. And there's also a degree of just feeling passionate. I feel passionate about this, and I want to genuinely help this community. There are things happening in the news cycle right now, and I just feel like raising more awareness will help educate people. And I think, and I'm doing that, and I'm going to continue to do that. I actually call it the Matthew Legacy. After this series ends next year, I've been working with some organizations that do provide sensory inclusivity, and I'm going to keep building that. And I think this is what my journey is moving outside of this.
No, it's great. And on top of that, it's a feeling of, service, right? That you're providing certainly the joy of acting and fulfilling in your career, but that fulfillment actually is so deeply enriched by giving and how much there is in service with that. I'm curious, as you speak of, like, again, holding your inner child's hand and going through the journey as an actor in Hollywood, also recognizing that there's a purpose about this. What have you actually, in a way, had to unlearn about yourself in order to find your place?
Because I'm still unlearning some stuff too. But I think that's the journey of being human. And I think if we lean into those things, it just makes things easier and don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think that's a big thing. A lot of things I felt like I've had to unlearn is just one of them is like, I think this has to do with technology, but just expecting a response immediately.
Mm,
And I'm realizing with myself, that's what I do to others. I expect that in return. But also, I've learned that that's not the healthiest way sometimes, because it's usually an emotional response if you reply
yeah,
immediately to certain things.
yeah,
And so I've really taken that time to unlearn that habit of mine of, oh, I get this email, I have to do this right away. The workaholic mentality, or maybe the Indian boy working, I don't know, just the school child in me, just always getting those straight A's is still alive. But that's kind of something I've had to unlearn and realize that you need to just take a moment and
yeah,
slow down. I think
yeah.
that's a big thing, is slowing down. I think we wait for the immediate response, the immediate now, even
Hmm.
even auditioning or just, working towards your career. It takes time. It's all the best things take time. And so that's something I've really had to unlearn. And I think in a way that means patience as well. So, yeah, there's probably one example I can think of right now on the top of my head. I've probably got plenty. I'll email you.
There you go. I may not respond right away, but sure.
Yeah, hey, I'll take a minute to get past the emotional response, but I'll definitely give you a few more unlearning mechanisms I've had to adjust to.
It's so funny. I remember speaking with an actor who's on Broadway named Adi Roy, and he was saying that auditioning is really the job, but the byproduct of that is what you celebrate. And so the roles that you get, and you speak of this, like, sort of patience and building these pauses automatically, that's not something that always comes so naturally to people either. So, for you, I mean, in kind of learning to let go of some of that fast twitch responding, over time, at least, has it allowed you to actually be a better auditioner, if you will, or someone who's now a little bit, prepared differently for some of the roles that you have to think about, whether that's current or in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think, anytime you find things to help yourself unlearn habits that aren't really helping you, that's all comes useful into the workspace for, the
Yeah.
auditioning space for me. And so I've definitely utilized that. Sometimes when I read a script or look at, the scenes I have to do, I'll do something called marinating, which
Mm.
I'll look at it, but then put it away, and then I'll be thinking about it, but I'll still move on my day, kind of, do things to relax my mind and not get into stress mode. So for me, it's like going to the gym or being outside or something like that. So it's definitely helped with that. I think as this show has just done what it's done, that's also helped me and aided me and to, try and not hold expectations. In an instant, things can change for the better or for the worse. Of course, you want every role you audition for, but that's not always the way, and you just got to tell yourself, I gave it my all, and on to the next.
You think about the fast twitch sort of responding and developing that patience, and also, giving yourself the grace to move on from the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. But I'm just so curious if your background in finance actually somehow bleeds into the acting work this way, where, what that world potentially is like.
100%. My background in finance, 100% helped me budget my first almost 6 years out in
Mm,
LA. It's
yeah.
expensive, and I came out with savings, and I did things from like day trading to just genuinely like putting my money into good places so I can have some residual income because when you audition out here, you were going into all the studios and all the spaces, like you needed to have a free day. And so it was really hard to kind of find the timing for a job. And it didn't work out for me. So I really utilized my background in finance to really just teach me the value of the dollar, even
Yeah.
more. I think I grew up knowing
Yeah.
the value of the dollar, but also
Yeah.
just, yeah, it really helped me. It also helped me with my accounting because, I did learn how to save pretty well, and then just also I was doing my own taxes for a while until I was
You're
like, I don't have the time. And then a lot of my friends started coming to me for financial advice, so that was great. But I've retired, or
there you
not
go.
yet, but you
Yeah.
never.
Well, I mean, like it allows you to win at adulting, right? That's
Yeah,
probably the first victory that anyone can have as a young adult in America as well.
yeah. Well, I just needed to tell my parents, hey, look, this degree I got is put to use some way,
There you
somehow.
go. Right.
So
Well, I mean, speaking of which, I mean, other than your name, I mean, like our names are what identify us first and foremost as, kind of who we are, but our background, our heritage, our culture, etc. But other than your name, are there elements of being Indian American, Gujarati American, Hindu American, South Asian American, like all the tags that we put on ourselves? Are there any of those elements that kind of speak to you on a day-to-day basis and like are ingrained in your sort of everyday practice, so to speak?
first and foremost, when I'm working out, my playlist is Bollywood music, 90s Bollywood to be specific. If I'm getting into an
90s
emotional
Bollywood. All
space,
right.
90s
Yeah,
Bollywood, that's what I grew up with. My mom, every Friday night would go to our local Indian store and bring home the newest movie, and we
there
would
you go.
eat like pani puri, bhel, and
Yeah,
just have and pizza, and
yeah.
just have a good Friday night. And that's kind of how I grew up. Every summer as a kid, up until I want to say like early high school, was in India for 2 months with my mom and spending time there. I didn't feel like I was such a fish out of water when I was in India, even though they can tell that we're NRIs and this and that. But growing up, it was such a different experience for me than how life was here. And because it was hard for me to make friends and keep them, honestly,
Mm,
out here. And in India, it was just different. And so I just loved being there. And my first interest in the arts was through a Bollywood film,
yeah,
specifically a Govinda movie, and
yeah.
Akshay Kumar and all those actors and veterans that I see now. So that kind of made me interested in this space. That's the Indianness in me. Gujarati at heart, celebrates Navratri, loves Garba Ras and all that stuff. I performed in my college teams competitively. So my roots have always been in me, and I think that's what I've used to build who I am today. And what's great is that I can tell everyone about it and kind of make people more aware of my background. And it's been pretty cool to get a platform like that because, like I said, raising more awareness creates safer spaces, and I think
Yeah.
our community needs that.
Yeah, no, it's all about those windows and mirrors. And on top of that, like, you say a lot of that with such pride and both nostalgia and also sort of like living it on a day-to-day basis. I'm wondering now that like as someone who has been through that kind of game of being an actor in Hollywood and finding some success with The Chosen and in the endeavors that you have had, what's it like today in 2025 to be an Indian American artist or actor? Do you think that the landscape had obviously it's changed over the last decade, but are there significant, leaps that the community has made beyond just the visibility part, but like now even being in positions of power or in influence to be able to kind of like shape storytelling and narratives? And from an actor's perspective, do you think that there is sufficiently work been done, or are we far away from where we need to be?
It takes a slow build. It takes time to get to where we want to be. Do I feel like we are there? Have I felt that way? I don't think I've ever felt like it's happening. It's a slow change. It's been great to see roles out there that specifically call for someone that's Indian or from the Indian continent, and
Yeah.
they're actively seeking that. And there's some great movies coming out from experiences I went through as a American born Indian. That kind of stuff is happening, but I just feel like there's such a push to make it happen. I think the obstacles are greater, and I think that if there's anything I know about our community is that we're resilient and people will champion stories being told. I'm always hopeful that it'll just be more, and we'll get the platform that we deserve, and that comes also from behind the scenes. It comes from producers, directors, even casting directors recognizing Indian talent, and
Yeah.
also recognizing that we in India is so diverse.
Yeah.
Everyone looks different, and so just kind of opening up that compass and opening up that world for the world to see that and say, oh, because uh, I don't know how I'm segueing into this, but I'm just gonna say because it's on my mind. Like growing up, I was always told that I wasn't Indian or Indian
Mm.
enough, and I was like, "Are you
Yeah.
kidding?" Like I'm listening to like Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam right now. Like I'm just like and like I go to the temple and all that stuff, and so it was just interesting to get that kind of feedback. And so I think right now when it comes to work, kind of feel that a little bit, and I just hope that changes with just productions and things like that, and they really see that there's a wide array of talent out there. But again, to go back to your question, like I said, all good things take time, but I do think we're in a forward movement. And I think right now there's a lot happening in the country where voices like ours are going to be stomped on a little bit. But I think that
Mm.
we still have a fight in us and a resilience that we're going to make sure they get told.
Something you said kind of just struck me for a second, which is, being told you are or aren't someone. And this idea that, like, you're just sort of like thinking to yourself, like, okay, like on the one hand, I got to be myself and I'm going to work on being authentic. And this is just who I am. And on the other hand, there's sort of like this build and this fight constantly to prove yourself and demonstrate. Like, do I have to prove my identity to you? Do I have to like show it more, or does it really matter? And so, in that way, like, do you find that the real levers of being able to prove yourself as a community lie? I mean, it lies everywhere, but does it really need volume, or does it need the strength of just really good storytelling? Or do we really need, I mean, like, do you have designs on being a director or a producer yourself at some point so that you're in better control of that?
No, I hope to do that. I don't think it's in me to direct right now, but there's definitely some stories that I've come across that are just so interesting about our culture and things that I didn't know. And so, I have ideas written down, but again, I'm not an accomplished writer as well. But I hope to do that. And if a great story comes my way, yeah, I would love to get into producing at some point. But I just feel like having a platform where you can openly speak like this is where people will get listening and will open up or will kind of resonate with what you're saying. And many might not understand it. They haven't been through my experience or other
Mm-hmm.
experiences
Sure.
people from our community go through, but there's going to be one person listening out there. And if at least one person can really take that message to heart, then that's effective enough.
On this show, there's about 9 people listening right now, but
Great.
it's better than one. That's right.
Yeah.
No, and so
Nine
like
people and 10 Patels
nine
the 10,
people
all
and
10
10
Patels will
Patels.
listen to another Patel.
There you go. There you go. I mean, and so does it change in a way like how you measure success for yourself? I mean, does success for yourself, of course, mean being cast and being parts of productions that find, that monetary success, that visual success, like, hey, we've got this many viewers or our audiences are global and whatnot. But do you also have a parallel kind of measurement of success, which is how much awareness you're building, whether that's being an Indian American or how much awareness you're building as a champion for the neurodivergent community? I mean, those kind of milestones of success now for you, how do you know that, kind of like you're on the right path, if you will?
You know, when it comes to the word success, authentically, I'll say that I think I'm still chasing it. And I think that's where it lights a fire in me and keeps my drive going. But something that's also come up that I measure is my worth. I think I've realized my own self-worth. And I think
Mm,
that's such an important tool to recognize as an individual and know that about yourself, because from that is confidence. From that grows your own power. And I don't say there's no ego with that, but you find out yourself. You find out this is what I can do. This is what I can give. This is how I want to help and serve others. And that's how I realized that. And that's through the arts for me. And that's through playing the role of Matthew and inspiring the world. and showing a world and raising awareness to people that never knew of autism and things like that. And so that's kind of how I am measuring my worth, not my success, I think.
No, I like that a lot. Yeah, I think that you're right. That like it's sort of this idea of success being an external measure, but self worth being something that you're really sort of cognizant of on an ongoing basis. That really matters. Most importantly to you. When you
Yeah.
think about this idea of kind of building confidence in yourself, and then also developing that sense of confidence, for others around you. Have the roles that you've had in the past, whether that be on Teen Spirit or Fresh Off the Boat or on The Chosen, have they all been sort of additive for you in building more and more trust with teams or with peers, or audiences, or for that matter, even yourself? I mean, have all of these been sort of rungs on a ladder to keep going in that sort of trust building experience?
Yes, 100%. Great question again. Teen Spirit was my very first project and my very first audition ever. So I was still learning the ropes. I just done 4-month intensive acting course,
Mm.
and this was the first thing that I got. And so I was still learning things, and it was a bit rough, I would say, because you realize quickly that uh, some people might treat you differently than what you would be used to. And so that kind of helped build that. It really formed the whole you need to have a thick skin mentality, and that's something that I probably did struggle with growing up, but I think I've become way better at it because it's just like, yeah, you can't let things get to you. But definitely they are rungs on the ladder.
Hmm.
What The Chosen has given me, like I said, it is a form of my worth and confidence, and especially my work. And I just feel so comfortable kind of being so vulnerable in different moments. And, our director, showrunner, Dallas Jenkins, really creates that safe space. And I'm just able to try things that, just different risks in a scene. And that kind of makes it alive. It's always great when you see something and people are like, oh, I didn't think of it this way, but I loved it. So it's like you're really creating art together.
Mm.
And that show has really brought that out in me.
You think about taking risks and the ability and the freedom, almost the liberation to take those risks on camera. And then when I think about sort of like the zoom out a little bit and think about the macro, do you have to sometimes catch yourself to not be too much of a futurist in like what could be? And if, because of course if you do constantly think about like the next role after that, that you're certainly not necessarily staying present and engaged in the moment, and therefore
Yeah.
if you're not necessarily in the moment, you won't be liberated enough to take those risks in the first place. So how have you found kind of getting through that kind of balancing act?
I'm laughing because I was like, maybe you just talk to my agent, because that's kind of been, that's kind of been my worry, just to get off something that's going to be 8 years long, and just really, for lack of a better term, not seeing what should happen with the quote unquote global show, not really translating, but,
Sure.
I'm using that as a lesson to continue to work harder. But
Right.
one of my biggest things through my self journey, like I mentioned to you, that I've been going through the year and a half, is to live in the present and not in the future. Because when you keep thinking in the future, you're going to forget the moments that are building you towards that. And you're not going to operate in that way of being in the present moment. And that might affect something for your future. And I think that's an Eckhart Tolle thing. I don't know. I follow all these self-help people on Instagram. Um, it's so important to live in the present because you don't know what you're going to miss. And, a fun activity I like to do if I'm taking a walk or something, if I find my futuristic mind going to other things, there's this thing of to stay present. You just look and pick at 6 things around you and
Mm.
call it out.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that to kind of ground myself again. And then, and I just get myself out of that headspace of like, Boris, like, okay, just relax. But,
Right. Get those six
yeah,
things right now.
yeah, literally just call it out right now. And then
Yeah.
that will be like, oh, wait, I'm here. And I shouldn't be thinking about X, Y, and Z. That I have no idea how that might go about. Things can change in an instant,
Mm.
and you're gonna regret not living in the moment. And I do that with this show. Like, sometimes I'm not enjoying the fruits of my labor, I guess, sometimes because I'm always thinking of the future. So that's why it was so important for me personally and professionally to kind of really call myself out on that. And I think a lot of people should kind of do that because we worry and we're missing what the essence of life should be, I think. And I just, you want to enjoy the moment. You don't want to regret
Totally.
it later in life,
Yeah. Yeah, no, so true, right? Like I mean, and I love that idea of, you have to have like anchors in front of you. If you can just pick out those six things and
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
reminding yourself, okay, if that's what it takes, then that's what we need to sort of like, stay grounded and focused in the moment. Let me get you out of here on this because this sort of speaks to that where you think about past, present, and future, but at the same time, it is still an engagement of the person who's watching you on screen or the person who's meeting you for the first time. And so, I'm curious, how do you introduce yourself to people who've maybe never met you before and they're just learning about your work? And what do you hope they take away?
Very interesting. I just I'm like, when was the last time I introduced myself to someone? What do I normally do? Usually I take those questions as like, oh, where are you from? Like, what's your
Right.
background and stuff like
Right.
that. So, I would introduce myself as Paras Patel,
Yeah.
I am someone that actively dreamed as a kid to be somewhere and do something with my life that people rarely in my community saw or understood or knew. And I did everything I could to make it work. And if there's anything that I want to speak to for anyone out there, but more specifically the South Asian community, is that you can also do it too. Find your calling, find your purpose. Don't give in to societal pressures or what is expected of you because you will just burn yourself out. Really find what you feel like you're meant to do and go with that. And that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not to realize like, oh, maybe this thing I wanted to do isn't what I want to do. But live in that. Nobody's perfect. And that's kind of what I would to look at me and look at my path.
Well, it's an ongoing journey. It's one that is never perfect completely for anyone, but doing so with purpose and such great introspection is something that I know that audiences everywhere are hopefully appreciating and are going to continue to appreciate for a long, long time. Paras, this was great. Really enjoyed connecting, and what a treat to have a conversation. I hope we can visit with you again in the future.
Well, I would love that, Abhay. And I know you mentioned that you're a pediatrician, so I just want to say thank you for what you do. My parents would have loved for me to be a pediatrician, but appreciate appreciate all you're doing and really love that you're creating this platform for us to get to know each other and talk and raise awareness, like I was mentioning, and educate. And you're doing some good stuff, so it's an honor to be on it.
Thanks so much. I always like to say, conversations, the antidote to apathy. You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Stay tuned.